Oh, they got everyone. They have everyone.
Okay. Ready? Okay, I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting Monday, June 3rd, 7 p.m. Laura, will you please call the roll?
Peters.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Soretta.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
Kiesling. Here. Waring. Here. And Fontaine.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you very much. First up, Community Economic Development, Chairwoman Kiesling.
Yes, we had a presentation about this 2 weeks ago. And I think we asked our questions. Anybody else have any more questions?
I threw mine away. I do.
And ask Pat, because he was with the consultant for the most amount of time. I can't answer what I don't know, so go ahead.
All right, in none of these, Pat, do I see the Suarez building. Why is that? Am I missing it?
I think you're just missing it. All, the entire Hoover district is in,
But
is
in
in the
none of
DRD.
these, it shows, you know, the colored of them that I saw, that it's in there. So can we look at that then and make sure that that
Yep.
is in there? You don't have to do that, but let's make sure that that is, because I couldn't believe that wasn't. And I looked at every one of the pictures, and that's why I came by the other day and got colored ones, because those black and white ones are very hard to see. So unless you know which one it is, I even had someone else look for me too, and I just said,
DRD 1, isn't it?
DRD1 is the parcel number. Their entire property is in one parcel number.
DRD1's right there. I don't see. That's not the Suarez warehouse building, though.
334 Orchard.
That's not it, it's over here. Well, it's not in the picture. So I just want to make sure, because we don't want to make a mistake like that.
DRD 3.
DRD3. Nope, still not blue. It's not blue. I marked the ones where it's at in every one of these.
It's right there, yeah.
Is it District 3?
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Here's Charlotte.
Yeah,
Mark's got the,
I got the colored
copy,
one.
that helps.
And,
Because here's the stuff.
here, Jeff, take a look at that, or someone, and see if you can see that.
Charlotte goes right into it.
That's one.
Pat, I've got the black and whites, and
It's DRD
I think
3.
Mark's on it. I can't find it
2, 3 here.
on the
3.
draw. Maybe the map has been misdrawn.
3, that's, you got a big X on it.
I got a big X on the building, and they're not blued out in every one that was close to it.
Where it is again.
Okay, it's not in the color coded.
Nope, you're right. It's on the map, but it's not blue.
All right, so that's something we probably should take care of.
What's the parcel number?
Here we go, and have it right up there. Yeah, there it is, it's that checkered building, when you see it, it's the,
It's right there.
okay, so that's not blued, is that,
What's that parcel number? Is it in the legend?
I can't read this. Maybe. No, can't even do it with that,
Oh, I see.
so that's not working.
What do you got there, Rob?
I was just wondering, could it be included?
Yeah, that is 1000419. Yeah, that's in parcel number 1000419, which is DRD1.
One? Okay.
It's just, but it
None of us
is,
could read that, definitely, so we need to make sure that the picture at least shows it. So we're good, that is in there?
it's in there.
Okay.
It's like ragu, but it's a good observation.
All right.
It's in the recipe?
It's just not blue.
It's just not
DRD 1
blue.
is just not blue on the color code.
Yeah, I'm colored.
Is that it right there?
Parcel number.
That's one, but I think that
10,419.
building is this.
That's it.
Yeah.
Another question.
All right, I'll get that handled.
Okay, I figured you would. When we do create this, are we able to create dates in progress, kind of dates and finish dates and penalties if those dates aren't? Are we able to do any of this stuff when we, or is, I mean, as this thing goes through?
Well, as you may recall, at the time that these go into effect, when, you pass them, the mayor signs them, it's like a starting gun going off to a race. The clock starts, you have 10 years minus every second that it takes. So if a company wants to tear down buildings between, 6th and 7th Street Northeast, Rick's Sporting Cards, et cetera, and take out a block, and to the time that they come in and apply for it, there's only 9 years left. They only get 9 years worth of, up to 9 years worth of DRD credit. Now, it's subject to negotiation. We don't have to give them 9 years. We don't have to give them 70%. Depends on the nature of the project. That's what the council will have to look at. Some projects may be more worthy than others.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to give us an advantage, so when someone says they're gonna do something, that it gets done when we wanted to get it done, and not wait till the 10th year because we need it before that. That's kind of what I'm going
Yeah,
towards.
that's why we want to do them all at the same time, is I don't really care, I guess we really shouldn't care where on Main Street this stuff happens, but if somebody has an interest on South Main that they want to take down a few buildings and consolidate lots and build something new, they understand that it's in their best interest not to wait till the 9th year because they're not going to get the
Right.
tax incentives. They're going to go right now.
Yeah. I understand that too. We surely don't want to do this and wait for those folks, and that's why I think it's important, whatever language we put in these things is, did you have-
Well, to answer your question, unlike a CRA, where the tax proceeds go to the developer, those monies are going to flow to the city for dispersal. So to answer your question, we would have an agreement or a contract with the party, and then if the party failed to perform, we simply turn the spigot off.
so we have control over the funds.
We
and the account.
absolutely have control
And
of
there's
the
a different
money.
count for every different parcel.
That is correct. Every project within a DRD would have its own separate contract.
So this is just for my understanding of it too, because I've been asked this question here. Let's just say we approve something over there and the property tax starts increasing, in the next 2 years, and they don't even get started for the next 3 years. We still collect that every year, even though it starts moving? No, we don't. Okay, I got a yes over there, I got a no over there. Okay,
Well,
It's only going to start if there's, the property tax value is only going to, rephrase that. We're only going to collect based on the change in the property value as a result of the project moving forward. It's a tear down, rebuild, or it's a modification. They put $1 million into it, whatever it is. That's when eventually that number gets certified to the auditor. The auditor collects the taxes, sends it to the treasurer. Treasurer sends it to the city.
and how often do they do that, reassessing the taxes? Every year?
Well, I mean, there's a couple ways that they
Some
do
people
it.
say 7 years.
Generally, on a big project like that, the auditor would do that immediately. But they also have a regular scheduled where they go back and review all buildings that haven't been looked at for a while.
I got a question.
That's every 3 years.
So hypothetically, when they do work to the building, they get permits, they get approved, inspected, and done, and then it gets turned in, correct? So that's like a tracking of the improvements to the real estate.
Yeah, and they would want it recertified because they want the tax
Right.
incentive. So they
So-
would want the
so-
auditor to come out and look at it.
So the sense that I have is that as we do the improvements, that's the incentive for them to get it done and get credit for it. So those values go up so they have access to that money as long as they play in the right sandbox.
we can collect, so the income tax, or the property tax is going to be collected, but how it is used, that's how the city is going to determine how those funds, typically, so if this building here, let's say it's a building that we're in right now, I mean, it's City Hall, but let's say the building is normally, the property tax is $1 million, right? Valuation, and then it goes up to 20 million. Well, that increase in the property tax, the property owner has to pay. But then what is done with that money, that's where we determine under the downtown redevelopment district how that money is used. In some cases, it could go right back to the company that's paying it. But we do also have the flexibility of utilizing those funds for other sources too. So we could put some of the money into the CIC. You could put it into another,
Infrastructure.
another structure,
Infrastructure.
infrastructure,
Roads.
right. Roads, library,
I think by having 9 districts, that's, will make a big impact in the downtown district.
8.
8, I'm sorry. Did we lose one?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So we had 8, I lost one.
No, we presented 8, but we couldn't do the 9th one.
Okay, not enough acreage.
Right,
It was a 10-acre piece, I guess.
right.
So the 8 DRD districts will be powerful because it will create that gravity we're looking for to help propel us to what we've been missing.
Yes.
I'm excited about it. I'm really excited
Just want to
about
make sure
this.
we get it all right, though. On this thing here, why are they yellow? Those are the ones, was trying to read this. The ones that are yellow mean, is that,
With the highlighted
yeah.
That's just the parcel number and the assessed value.
But there's some that aren't yellow, so does that mean that those weren't included?
All the ones that are listed in the list, whether they're yellow or
yellow?
not, are included in the DRD.
Okay, but, okay.
That's just a editor's discussion point.
Okay, and then another thing, I was reading through this thing, there's a chance to create an innovative district along with the DRD. Are we going to pursue that?
We are going to pursue several different things. I think the next thing that's on the agenda as part of this is the entertainment district, then the innovation district. But the entertainment district is something that we feel that we need more right now
Yeah.
because of the restaurants that could be here, save for the liquor permit issues, and the entertainment district helps address some of those things. The innovation district would be working on getting, the
Gigabytes?
the gigabyte up and down service into here. Typically, that goes out to a university as an anchor. We're looking at more getting it into the central core as the
Innovative
anchor.
district, if you put 100 gigabytes in, you become an innovative district and try to get more high-tech stuff with different funds that they'll be able to receive, so you can be qualified then as a.
Like
I've
our-
had some people approach me about that, about just putting something on our water towers, and we could really, so it's something we should probably look into also.
It's, yeah,
I
no,
mean,
this
that's
is,
the beginning of it, if you get enough,
you have to run fiber
yeah.
from its disbursement point, to the city. For instance, we talked with, we had talked with the city of Fairlawn about the service that they provide, and they get, their internet service from another entity, but they had the fiber run to Fairlawn, and then Fairlawn is running all the fiber around the city. But that piece that came from the internet service provider to Fairlawn, for that 100 gig service was done. That's kind of the thing that we would need to do here. Somebody has to provide that to us. It's not something that we can go out and invent, but there's a lot of them out there that are available now.
Yeah.
We went to Kent State, remember that conference we went to about the fourth utility? So, I mean, as we move forward with the changes downtown, and with the 75 million millennials that are going to populate our earth, which they are, we obviously want to make sure we're geared for that trend, and it's coming, like it or not.
That's all the questions I have. I'm all, think this is terrific.
Good questions, and I'll get you your answers.
Let me get your color copy. I had a couple comments. Make sure I got it right. Okay, it's not, I guess, a concern, but a statement I'll make. District, or DRD 6, I think the vision in my mind, once this gets done, we'll be optimistic, say it's gonna happen across the street. There's gonna be so many units there, and frontage for commercial, and hopefully Main Street Grill will pick up, and other things will happen around it. I really feel that area there, that green space should remain a green space. I think you're gonna need it. I think we should concentrate on redevelopment of existing buildings, replace those, enhance those, because I think that would just be a great asset to have in this community, whoever's going to own it, whether the schools or us down the road or however we collaborate with it. I just think it's important to have a green space area near downtown, because we won't have one. We'll have parking lots, maybe because of St. Paul's, but we won't have any green space, so I think that's important to consider,
Well,
just for the record.
Appreciate that. That probably isn't, just speaking candidly, not the direct focus for that. I mean, I think that the council has to wrestle with the idea that there is very little, land available inside the city limits that's developable, where we can generate income-producing jobs. This is if you look at that, that's approximately 9-point-something acres. And just as an idea, not saying that this has been vetted or anything, not even pursuing it, just trying to give council color, that's all. But if you took, say, the north of Washington Square, there's some professional office buildings north of Wendy's. If you've seen them, there's 5 of those. Each one holds 4 professional offices, one holds 6. That total acreage for that, including all the parking that goes with that, is 4 acres. So to me, it would seem that you probably have room for both. You got 9 acres there. I think 9 acres in the middle of the city as a park, certainly beyond what is in downtown Canton as their green space, which is a city block. But I think if you could get some income-producing revenue out of it, that you'd be better served in the long run to help pay for maintaining that green space. But
Well, I just think we should think about it. I appreciate development, commercial community development. I just, make sure we leave room, like I said, to have a core area that we can utilize. Because, like I said, I'm hoping this happens. We were hoping it already would have happened. You would already maybe seen a need for that area. So I just want to make sure we take that in consideration. Second thing is, I guess when we pass this, I guess we're invoking our trust then into the mayor, director of administration, and director of law to make the future decisions on this. Is anything coming back to council, or is this a decision that?
That
Oh, go ahead.
squares with my comments. I believe that the ultimate authority should rest with the council.
Okay.
We authorize the administration and our employees to negotiate on our behalf, but ultimately, the decision, I believe, should rest with council.
Are we sure that the
No.
language is there?
No.
Well, let's keep in mind, as Marcia was probably just about to point out, because she, in her committee, she's responsible for the Turks and the CRAs and all that stuff. Every one of these is going to follow the same format. It's going to all have to be run through the Turk or the Housing Council, whatever it is. All that has to be approved by the county team, generated report that the city council is going to have to approve it, then it's all going to have to be filed with the state. Every single deal is a separate thing that has to go through the council. And certainly the administration would not want to be in a position where we're negotiating something and we don't have the support of council ahead of that time.
Amen.
Okay.
So, my only comment, I guess, on that, and Daryl and I have spoke a little bit. I think, so I differ a little bit. I think if it did come back to us as a body, not as one of us on the committee, or one of us on the Turk, one of us on the Housing Council, I think it unfortunately does put a lot of politics in play, and who are your friends, and who wants what, and I know this is, so I think by running it through committees with only 1 or 2 of us on there, or, you can make a meeting, I can make a meeting, whatever, we sort of take out that edge. I just feel like we're elected, and sometimes we gotta keep ourselves away from some of this stuff to some extent.
Still has to be approved by council.
In the end, it's
Yeah.
approved by us, but not negotiated by us.
No, I don't mean that council as a 7 body negotiates. I just think we don't want to run into situations where we had other CRAs, agreements, and
Yes.
it maybe wasn't as transparent as it should have been. And I'm just talking. These roles change in these chairs. This isn't just us.
No,
I
absolutely.
mean, do I have faith in Pat and
And
Laura and you
we-
guys? Yes, but that doesn't mean that something might change next year, the year after that, or we got a 10-year process here. That's only my statement.
And I think all Pat was saying is there is a process in place so
Right.
we already follow it with the Turk and the Housing Council and the
Okay.
reinvestment.
So I think really what council's clarifying is that any decision that's going to be determined for the downtown redevelopment district, they will be approved by city council. Ultimately, it will be approved by city council. You may have the various committees where members of the council will be on, the
Yeah.
committees as you're going through the process, but ultimately, we want the council to approve it, so that we don't have something like we did with the CRA where,
Dan, I think the
No.
appropriate place to express that is in section 5 of this ordinance. Because section 5 does not say that.
can you change it?
Well, keep in mind, on page 28 of the proposal, what they were suggesting is that the Hoover District DRD Operating Committee would consist of the mayor, the director of administration, director of law, a representative from a local bank, chair of the CIC, and a minimum of 2 DRD district property owners appointed by the committee.
I think we're talking about two different things. I think there is an operating committee,
Right.
but ultimately the
okay.
authorization to proceed should rest with the
Well,
council.
that committee was to make recommendations to the city council on the rates, terms, job, and capital investment requirements of grants and loans to owners. So you're talking, that's more the reporting end of it? Negotiate rates and terms of grants and loans with owners of historic and non-historic buildings in the DRDs. That's what the operating committee does.
Pat, where are you at on that?
I'm not sure.
Page 28.
Page 20 right
Page
there.
28.
I'm not sure that is that reflected in the language of the ordinance, however. It's in the report, I guess we're gonna adopt that as an attachment. But could the report itself be clearer to that point? Or, excuse me, could the ordinance itself?
We'll make it clearer.
I mean, we fully support, and what we want is that whenever we're making a big decision for the downtown redevelopment district, because you could be talking millions of dollars in property taxes. So we want the council to give that final approval. So you have the operating committee that consists of various members that, as Marcia had said, you're involved in the negotiations or the development of the agreement. But then ultimately, it will come back, and if it's not clear in this language, we want it to be crystal
Just
clear.
gotta put it in one sentence, that's all, that all things
all
need
you
to come
gotta
back
do.
to council.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We can, I believe section 5 is the consultant looking at the overall authority when you're executing contracts, that final step, that last step is, signed by the mayor, pointing out that the director of finance has the funds sufficient for the project, the director of law for form and content. That's the final portion in there. But what we may do there in section 5 is perhaps just before that, or incorporated with that, each DRD agreement shall be approved by, you could say, resolution of council, and then the agreement approved by the mayor of finance. So council shall have its say where it's going.
Thank you.
Very good.
One other thing, and you mentioned a ninth one, I've had questions the last time about those 10 properties up next to Charlotte. I think it'd be a great idea to get those in. I don't know why we would leave those out. Why?
Can't, too big, goes above the 10 acres.
There are more than 10 acres, you said?
The school property consists of 9-point-something acres.
Okay.
So you can't go over 10 acres in the DRD. So you can't get the 17 properties that are on Charlotte that you'd have to acquire. They're residential properties.
But to Mark's question, we can, in
Right, we
the
just add
future,
another.
create a 9th DRD at a time we deem appropriate.
Why don't we just create one now, though? What's holding that back?
You don't have enough, your acreage is too high. You can't get all 17 of those properties along Charlotte.
Oh, sure.
If that's what we're talking about.
Not Portage.
Really, I'm along Portage is what I'm talking about. The 10 properties that just go, you know, that block on there, if we want that block to be something someday, whether it's a park, whatever it is, you gotta have those 10 properties to make it a whole. And that's why I'm saying now, for the future, that looks like something that we should be going after on this, instead of coming back and redoing everything. Is everybody seeing what I'm talking about here?
Which one are you on, Mark?
Pat, I'm on
Next to
DRD
six.
6, number 6.
It didn't connect to historic, like you couldn't get it connected to the historic issue. We talked about it.
Yes, on the old part, on Portage, I misspoke. I said Charlotte, but I meant Portage. There's 17 properties that we would have to acquire on Portage, the old Portage, to add to that. And that puts us well past 10 acres, and therefore it's not eligible.
But there has to be a historic
But we
anchor
couldn't get
to
the
do
anchor.
that, correct?
Right, because the anchor, we got to go all the way back across the street to the Hoover District to pick off one of those. And remember
Well,
that
is
the,
that, I don't mean to interrupt, but
but the main one on the corner of East Maple and Main, the whole West Factory, and you keep going back and up,
Right,
they created one parcel
right.
that's huge. So you can't get a piece of it. If it was like 10 different parcels over there, then you could grab one of these, one of those, which is what we did with most of the other stuff. But they have a super huge parcel that it stands by itself as a DRD.
Pat, is it possible to, this is just thinking broad and wide, is it possible to have it resurveyed and skim a piece off and create a new legal description? And stick, like, in other words, that big piece, you could skim off a piece, have it surveyed, send it to Stark County Regional Planning, get a new legal description, parcel number, and then make that part of the next DRD, hypothetically.
Yes, that is a possibility. A more likely possibility is just establishing a CRA for the residential properties, because the residential are really not supposed to be in the DRD anyway, but it doesn't mean they haven't been done. They've been done, but if for some reason you need to acquire those properties to make this a go there, you could put a CRA in for the residential portion of it. It'd get you there anyway.
well, I know, that's what,
But you
someone will
can't
say 10 years from now, why the heck didn't you put those in there? I think that will come up. What about the school there? That's gotta be historic property, no? That big, Charlotte School over here?
Nope, old but not historic.
Okay.
Nope, it has to be on the Federal Register of Historic Places or to be a federally registered historic district. Now, the only other property in town at the moment that qualifies for that description is the old Hoover home or farm or whatever it's called out there now, the historic building. That is on the Register of Historic Places, and you could build DRDs out there with that as an anchor for perhaps that 6.6 acres of land that's still available north of Washington Square. But that's, largely built out and new, so there just didn't seem to be any upside to the economic values that you would do out there.
To Patrick's point about a CRA, I think it's important to remember that on the DRD, the maximum allowable amount is 70%, a percentage. On CRA, remember, it's 100% if you're looking at you're looking at a project. So there is a certain advantage to having a CRA perhaps in that adjoining area, where you might have higher costs associated.
70% in 10 years without school
Yes.
district approval. But you can go beyond the 70 if the school district buys in. That is their property.
But 70% is the number, correct?
You could go higher than that,
Yeah.
but the school has to approve. And what we're saying about that over there, that might be in their best interest as we've talked with them. We've had some meetings about, aligning our strategic visions. And that could involve, swapping some parcels out.
So the DRD, what it does is it gives the city a larger percentage to have authority over. A CRA is 50%, the DRD is 70% for the city. And the city has 10 years to determine how that 70% would be used, whereas a CRA, we can determine 50% of the property and no more, and then the school approves the other 50%.
And the term's longer too, correct? 12 to 15, right?
Yes, on the CRA, you can go 50% for up to 15 years. And again, with the CRA, there's no starting gun. It's not the clock is winding down. The clock doesn't even start until the abatement is granted.
I think this is great, thank you.
One other clarification too, because I think one of the members had brought this up about, why are we doing them all at once? Because Patrick and I had that discussion originally, maybe we should stagger it. Maybe we should say, okay, we'll do this part of the Hoover District first, and then maybe 2 years we'll do the next one. But what we don't know is what businesses are going to want. We can't predict what parcel is going to be the prime parcel for a particular company. So we just thought we were just gonna put it all out front, right from the very start, so that as businesses come through, they'll be open to the whole menu of options in order to take advantage of that. But again, once we approve it, you get 10 years, and that's 70%. So it's important to, take advantage of it as soon as possible for companies to do that.
So I believe we need to set a public hearing, correct? Did we do that? We
Yeah,
didn't do-
well, there's some ongoing meetings that I think we would like to get a little more resolution
Okay.
on before we get to that point. So we would like to come back at the next instance of a committee of the whole where we feel we have something to move forward with in our discussions with some of the other parties involved here. And at that time, you'd be able to do that.
We always can have a public meeting for information and feedback from the public, but in the state statute for the downtown redevelopment district, there's no requirement. We can do that, but there's no requirement to do.
Okay. We'll put it on for 2 weeks and give us an update. Great. Next on the agenda is requesting that we send over to planning commission. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? Or just like deja vu for me. About the accessory use regulations, the fences and walls.
Yeah,
and-
this is just the formalizing.
Okay, so we're formalizing it, and sending it over to planning. We'll give it its resolution reading next week, if that's okay with everybody. Okay?
Everyone okay with that?
I thought we did that last time, so I apologize. So
We
we're
just
good?
talked about it, yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that's it for me.
No? There-
No, you wanted to amend the agenda to include,
A correction to ordinance concerning Howard Whitwer Orchard zoning, and I'd be happy to explain.
so Jeff, I'd like to
But-
motion to amend the agenda to add item C to my committee, amending the map for the rezoning.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Yes, in reviewing the documentation, the ordinance was properly drafted. It references properties on Orchard, Howard, and Whitwer. And the language in the ordinance that specifies the parcel numbers are all inclusive and accurate. Attached as part of that was a map, though, and the map that was attached included all but 3 of the property. So I emailed all that to you today. I printed out a copy of the map for you today. It's at the dais. And so it's 3 properties. It's one on Orchard, 389 Orchard, and then it's a vacant lot next to that at 389 Orchard. It doesn't have a number because it's a vacant lot. And then on Howard was the other one, and it's a vacant lot. I think that's currently being used by ACY Communication for some storage of some material, but it doesn't have a house number, so it's just the parcels. Those were all included in the ordinance. It just needed the map, so I did that front and back. We haven't voted on this yet. It's due for its first reading next week. So I thought it would be better to amend it in committee here so that when you get there, you have a clean piece of legislation.
Correct, it's just a technical correction, and I'm fine with that. If we amend it for our first reading, are we okay with that? Yeah, I went to planning that way, so,
Right. Yep. Thank you.
okay, we'll put on the, change it and put it on the agenda for next week
Amended, as amended.
as amended.
Okay.
I have a revision too regarding signage. Is that coming up next, or is that my turn? For the,
Finance and property is next according
Oh, I'm
to the
sorry.
president's agenda.
No, I think there was am I supposed to be on after her on the signage for
Yes,
market?
you're not on the list at all,
Oh, I'm
but you
sorry.
have to get on the list.
We
It's-
You're not.
You have to amend to allow you to speak. I'm not sure that you
Yeah,
got support.
I'm
but-
just trying to get this all figured out.
Okay, so we got.
No matter how you do it, it's just the way you do it. Don. Let's do it.
I just want to get it
For the
done.
record, that's outright teasing, so, because when you read it, you might not catch the subtle nuance with it.
Yeah.
It's
Moving
just-
on.
it's just- It's teasing.
Okay. Next up, finance property, Chairwoman Warren.
Okay, I know I'm on the agenda. We talked about the Johnson Control legislation, and they've presented to us, and I know we had tabled it a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks. And I think since then, Cheston has talked to a couple more individuals, and it was kind of funny, I was doing a Rotary presentation in Massillon the other day, and the CEO of Aqua, we've had a lot of conversations about, had asked me to present, and so I was telling him about kind of what we're doing and looking at this, and I knew they had a sludge machine. And he said, oh, you don't even need to do that, we'll just buy you. And I said, well, you're not gonna buy us, we like our water treatment plant, and, we are running it well. But the funny part it made me think is, if we don't react and start doing things to help facilitate what we're doing with the sludge and removal, there may come a time where someone buys us, because it's just not gonna be good for us to run it anymore. We're not gonna be able to get the sludge out and move. So it really made me start thinking about, well, what can we do? And looking at that proposal and the immediate nature of some of these things. And I got some figures. Oh, I actually asked them how he did it, and they did hire a whole person, and the person's an engineer. And they said that it was important to have that. Like, it just couldn't be anyone. It was a really special tasked job. It took a lot of time. He did end up managing it, but it was a whole nother job that they created. So when you look at that and the cost and what that is, that's just something to think about. And then I did get some numbers from Cheston on some different rates of what they were charging. So if we did like the whole project, it was $2 million, and then if we hired an engineering, and if we hired a construction manager, and then if you had change orders and the management fees, you'd be up to about 2.4. So there's about a $300,000 difference in there, based on what Johnson Control was gonna do. And then listening to all of you, I thought, well, maybe there's a way that we could really start moving on this, but maybe just piecemeal it together and say, could Johnson Control do the sludge press? We take that apart, we wait on the chiller, we wait on the lights, let's see how they do. They manage it, they run it. I don't think Pat has the time to do that at this moment. And I know Pat and Laura were kind of excited about this project, and just looking at what we could do with it. It helps our infrastructure, our investment in our water system. And I wanted to bring it back and see what you guys thought, and see if possibly we could amend it, maybe move forward on the sludge press. See what your thoughts were. Yeah.
Wasn't there cost like $96,000 for everything?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
That was bottom line?
And I asked her, I said, well, so where are you making your money? Like, what's in this for
Right.
you? I'm kind of missing some of this. So the engineering, there really aren't any costs for that. They don't make any money on that. But what they do make it on, just like any business, is they're like the management. So they put a 10% fee on the front end, maybe the back end, the front end for sure. And then they manage the change orders. So that's where they make their money. And I want them to make money too. I mean, they're a business, I get it. But we're not losing any money. I mean, this is helping our city, and we're moving forward on a very important part, which is a big revenue generator for us. And I want it to be like Aqua. I don't want him to, and he was kidding, like, we're gonna buy you. But that does happen.
What did Aqua pay for engineering then?
He said, well, I didn't give you, just that there was a whole nother cost, but he said it was definitely over 100,000. It was a lot. And it was a lot to manage, and it took
Probably
a
closer to
lot.
200,000.
Yeah, I mean, and I looked at Johnson Controls, and I was like, all right, you said it was 300, I'm gonna take 100 off of that, just because. So we're still at 200 with that. So I didn't know, and I haven't talked to Laura about, could we finance just the sludge, is there enterprise funds, what could we do? I don't know, but I just wanted to bring it back because I felt like it was important to our city, and I think we need to move on some of these things. We've talked about this a lot, and from our conversations, none of us are experts.
Okay, I got a question. So it's 2.2 million is what they said initially, and they said if we did the whole kit and caboodle at 3.2, amortized over 20 years at 3.8, which is 1.2 million in interest, right? It's a cost-neutral experience because, they're gonna save us money. So my thinking was, when I talked to Laura and Rob, we were saying, since we're on a pretty aggressive replacement plan for the water lines, they were doing an assessment to see over the next 5 years what needs to be addressed, to be proactive, and what is necessary that needs to be done. So if we could delay one of those projects, we would be able to pay cash pretty much for the 2.2 million, but they're the experts. The second thing is that if Mark being here, Mark, right? Mark is definitely the water guy, and he's pretty familiar with the project, and he's communicated with many of the people locally, so he's here, and I bet he'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And Mark, you had some conversation with him, so why don't you guys take it away?
Well, and I think one thing we need to think about is you are very opposed to the interest. I feel a little bit differently. I feel like for a city moving forward and for infrastructure and what our whole total budget is.
But I don't believe it's really infrastructure per se.
It is.
Well, the lights and the coolers and the boilers.
This is infrastructure. Have you looked at the revenue from it?
Well, no. We're talking about lights, we're talking about
But
going green. I'm saying that the big piece here is the 2.2 mil for the sludge press.
Right.
And the purpose of the sludge press is so that we could ship it away without using specialized trucking. And there's a slim chance we could sell it to the farmers, but that's a real slim chance. The reality is that we can haul it away quicker and more efficiently, but it's just like anything, to recoup that 2.2 million, we're talking years and years. So unless we can pay as we go, it's not like building a new building or something. This is like,
But this is how,
it's kind of like a heating system. It's like.
That's going to be broken,
It's,
that we're not going to be able to use.
well, in normal circumstances, when you run a business, you have to set money aside for these long-term projects to stay up to speed.
But people take out loans all the time for
But
businesses.
do you take a loan out for your furnace or
I
for your
have had
chiller?
friends, actually, Jeff and I said that.
My point is that.
People do though.
My point is that it's not very prudent to be able to operate that way. I'm just saying, we have the wherewithal to do it if we work our finances properly, and if we can delay one project for 1 year, if it's not critical, use that money and pay cash for it and be done with it. I'm just saying, that's the bottom line. It's foolish to finance anything unless it's like life or death or infrastructure. This is something that doesn't have to be done immediately. We're just looking long-term.
I don't think it's foolish. I think if
Well,
you're looking for your city moving
It's
forward.
an opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think sometimes you have to put money in to make money. So you're reinvesting in the future of our water plant.
I'm very familiar with business. I've been running one for 31 years.
I get it. I'm very familiar too. I work with one. I see budgets all the time.
Yeah.
I see nonprofits.
Well, I own one and run one.
That's great.
Well-
Good for you.
And I have employees, so I get it. I'm just saying, I'm very cognizant of the money. And if you don't pay as you go, then you get yourself in trouble. If we have a downturn in the economy, then we're still on the hook for something, for $2 million or $3 million. To me, I just say it can still be done in pieces, parts. We could do, like if Rob and Laura, they can communicate on what their progress is with that, if any. And then I'm sure Patrick wants to tell me something. Go ahead, Pat.
I'm not going to jump in between the two of you. I don't want to be bruised in any way. But let me just say this. I probably would disagree with the notion that it's not important. I don't think of it in that regard. There are 4 sludge lagoons. They need to be emptied. They are contingent upon weather. We put the sludge in the lagoons to hopefully allow Mother Nature to dehydrate and evaporate some of the liquid out. Have you noticed, Ohio becoming one of the next Great Lakes this past May? It makes the process more difficult. If we can't get it to dehydrate, then they're hauling it out in a larger form. The truck only holds so much. It's that much more that has to be trucked. So, what we're looking at right now is we've been barely getting by spending $100,000 a year for the last forever to try to get the sludge out, and we're not emptying the number of sludge pits that need to be emptied. So we do have a sludge bid that's going out here in June when the rest of the council meetings, and you approve that to go out for bid. And, we're going to get a new handle on what it takes to empty those, but we can't run the risk if the sludge lagoons fill up and we can't get them emptied, then you're in a situation where you're having to alter what you're doing to the water. Because that's a byproduct of the way we treat the water, and if you can't treat the water, then you have a bigger problem on your hand.
So if we eliminate one water replacement project, how much is a water, Rob, help me out here, and Laura, how much is a water replacement project that we have when we do 1 or 2 lines? How much is that? Did you hear what he said, million a year? So the project's 2.2 million or 2.1 million. So I'm just saying, can we work one of those projects and possibly work out another arrangement to come up with the money? I'm just saying, I believe we can, if we put our heads together, I think we can come up with the money and not really hurt us, and we won't have to finance it. And then on the next phase, we take care of the street lights, and then we take care of as you do the renovations here, the chillers and the boilers.
And I think when I look back at many major companies, they've taken loans on infrastructure to keep improving the processes, which they hire people, they have bigger companies, and they're doing more. So-
My suggestion is here forward, we should put aside a small percentage. I know.
Well,
Go ahead,
Can I
Laura.
speak to the financing just for a minute? Because like you said, I was thinking Eastbury, that was 700,000. That was one pretty good-sized water line project. So 3 Eastburys makes about the money you need for the press, given what Johnson
Oh,
has
I agree,
told
but
us.
then,
Let me finish.
Okay.
Thank you. When you're looking at this, it's not a choice of you definitely have to finance or you definitely don't. I think you need to decide, do you want to do the project? And then if you do you want Johnson to guide the project? Whether you do or don't, I have no dog in that fight. If you have them do that and they provide the engineering and provide the cost, then you make the decision, either we delay this for 3 years to save up the money, or we do it now and we finance it. But that's, to me, a different decision than whether or not you move forward with a particular company.
You could
to guide
even
the
do a
project.
hybrid, couldn't you? You could do, we skip one project, that's 1 million, maybe we do some kind of creative financing. I'm just saying it's not one or the other,
no, it
is it?
doesn't have to be.
I'm just saying.
Well-
Could help us, if I could, is if we had a set of plans in hand, I could go shopping that to our grant sources. Our grant applications are much stronger when you have a set of plans in your hands.
A set of
And
plans.
that could help us there.
So that's the solution to the problem, right there.
Not that we would get funded, but it would score pretty well.
Wait, set of plans for what?
So
What?
For the press.
They told us, you guys, they're not gonna give us a set of plans.
They would have to give us,
But
it wouldn't
that
be
would
like
cost.
a 80-page set, like the normal set, but they would have to give us something, as Mark and I were discussing before the meeting, because we're still gonna have to get a
They're not gonna
PTI
do it. They already
from
said
Ohio
that.
EPA, and they're gonna wanna see something. It may not be a real, 200 set detailed 4-bid set of plans that we have 10 contractors look at, but they're gonna have to give us something to go back to their vendors and also to the Ohio EPA, because they're gonna have to permit this thing.
But that's what they do, that's their job.
Right,
So I
right.
think she stood up here and said,
Right, and
listen,
they can help with their minimal set of plans, we could call it. That helps us shop it for grants or 0% loans or whatever we could look at.
I think that we'd probably have to commit to them first. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why, they said they're not making any money on the engineering.
Right, yeah.
So
we
they
would
put
have to
together
commit
this whole
some-
plan.
put something
Right.
together, yeah.
Well, call your friends at Aqua, see if they'll just lay it out for you.
Well, but if we're committing to them, what are they giving us? Are they giving us some form of a plan that Rob and Mark can take to the EPA and that Rob can take to granting agencies to get free dollars? Or are they not willing to give
No, I
us
think at
that
that point
unless
they
we're
are, but
willing
at
to
that
move
point we've
forward?
said, we're gonna pay your engineering fees and then we're gonna move forward with the project. Take this package, do what you need with it, but then we're gonna manage the project with whoever you have. And that's their thing, they manage it the whole way through.
Ready to say something? As we talk about this, and I think Patrick may have, I don't want to use the word downplay, but he probably softened the urgency. I think we have 4 lagoons, correct? We have 5. How many of those are at capacity now?
Well, up until the last month, we've
So you've got two and a,
We hit the window very hard, but again, it's rained in the last week, so they had to stop this week.
okay, so again, of the 5 lagoons currently, how many are, 2.5 are at capacity, correct?
Yes, and it takes 3 months to fill one.
Okay, so what Patrick has told us is that if we get to a point where those other 2.5 are filled up, and we can't haul them off, we will not be able to soften water, correct?
We'll be stacking.
Okay, it's a problem.
It's a problem. We can stack them, we can buy time, which we've done in the past already.
How much time do we have? How much time do we have with lagoons?
Right now you have about 7.5 months.
Okay.
2.5 over.
And so when we get into winter, does it change because of the weather
Well, you have
conditions?
2 windows, like we were talking, you have the spring when the farmers will take it in this form. You have the spring right now, or late spring, early summer, and then you won't have another window until after the crops come off the field. And last year, we couldn't get any on because the fields were so wet. We couldn't.
Which is all the more reason
Got into the problem.
to put it in powdered form.
Right.
We can stockpile it at the farmer's field in the dry form. You know, it eliminates part of the problem. What's the savings, say to do this right, every year we clean it out, it's $200,000. I'm throwing a figure out there, I might be close to it. Okay, what's the savings when we go with the sludge press after that? What's the savings on just operational cost, a new system in place that takes care of this work?
I really can't say you'll save a ton of money, but you're breaking even, but you're getting it now in a form that you can readily get rid of it, which is our problem right now. You're not gonna save a lot on the sludge press process itself.
No, that's what I mean, the end result, what we end up with. Isn't there gonna be a cost savings versus what transportation, how we're handling it now? That's my point.
Will be a lot less on
Versus the final result.
taking out as liquid, you know, you're hauling it out as 95% liquid now.
Okay.
5% solid.
She had some of those numbers, right, Mark? She had that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Can we revisit that? I think that's critical. I think if,
Doug, we know that right now we're spending about $105,000 a year. That's with not being able to get out as much as would be ideal. So let's take that as a conservative number. So if you think of $100,000 a year compared to a $2 million project, that's 20 years, 20-year payback. So, you know,
That-
once
that
you
was
hit
my
that
point.
20th year,
Yeah.
3 months to fill a pit, so you're basically 4 pits a year, and it's a little over $50,000 at the current price to get rid of a pit. So really, you're spending $200,000 a year. We just couldn't do it in the past because we couldn't get it
Right.
out.
right, I think that's my point. What are we saving on our operational costs of removing this?
It's just easier to get rid of, is what he said.
Right.
The bottom line is that, I think it's a good thing, I just don't want to finance it, that's all. So I'm
But-
giving solutions to the problem.
No, I think
If you
there's
guys
more
can figure
to it.
that out, we
no,
can
but
get
you're
there.
saving that 100,000 because that's that
That's my
trucking
point.
cost that we have right
But
now.
why do you not think that's even, why, I guess, when we even look at that, so in order for this to function, we have to get rid of it, right?
Right.
So isn't that the bigger picture as opposed to us saying, well, we're saving X amount? This is just part of the process with us having a water treatment plant. Like, why are we even saying, well, in 20 years we made our money back? We don't say that for the streets. Well, in this amount of time, we've got 20 years, thank goodness for this levy, or thank goodness for that. I don't understand why we're positioning it like this, when this is like almost a must-have
Hey.
in order for us to have the water treatment plant.
Well, I think it's a must-have, but I think there's also savings involved.
Well, there are.
That's my point.
Oh, so you're like, good.
Yes,
Oh, okay,
yes.
you're like, this is a bonus.
Yes,
I know.
I've been
I was
forward,
just-
if you
I
got
know.
$96,000 to engineer this,
Yeah,
go do it.
Yeah.
Now, you gotta take the lights off and the chiller and everything else, that's
Yeah.
even less probably.
it is.
That's my point. If that's your cost,
That's not the total cost.
I budget $250,000 a year, of which you're probably gonna spend at least 200 of that if you clean out every pit every year, to keep, and that's just to keep up.
Yeah.
So you will be saving that $200,000.
So, Mark, do you think if we would go down from, let's say we have to do the 4 and we made it the dry material, would it be just one time? Like, you know, so you get rid of all 4? Is it, are we reducing the amount we have to get rid of by 3/4? Okay, okay,
So 100K a year instead of 200K.
okay.
So you save 100,000. So here,
There's where you can get the farmers to cover that because they're taking it.
right. So the question is that we could use it, we should have it, we just don't want to finance it. So all we need to do is find the money to pay the 2.2, and then we get the system, and then we get it over time.
It's,
All right, just to break it down on the interest, again, directed to Member Fonte. So if my memory serves, you said that your interest calculation at the rate you came up with was like 1.2 million?
That was for the 3.2 amortized over 20 years at 3.8.
That was for the whole
Okay,
project.
so that was for the whole thing?
That's right, the whole
So
thing.
let's just say, I'm not
2.2 million.
advocating doing the whole thing, but I'm just going to leave the interest alone for a minute and say that to do the $2 million project, the $2.2 million project, I'm going to say that your interest is $1 million over 20 years. If that's the case, that's $50,000 a year.
But what I was saying is.
But I'm saying is that you will spend $50,000 worth of interest, but you can save at least $100,000 in trucking costs.
I'm with
So
you
to
on
me,
that.
you're
I
net
understand.
positive
I
in the
understand.
event. I don't understand.
Here's what I'm looking for, is just, can we just pull the money, like real quick, guys, this is my whole thing. The 2.2 million, or 2 million, why do we have to finance it? Can't we just pay for it out of the water fund if we eliminate
If there are water lines in your ward, can we eliminate them?
If they don't need replaced right now, I say delay it 1 year.
Not in my ward.
My
Hey,
thought
I'm
is,
just-
It's part of the game. I don't understand why.
Okay, guys, whatever, I'm just telling you my opinion. I don't think we should finance it in. I think it's a good thing. I don't see why we can't do what Rob said and give him the report, do the report, give it to him, let him get a grant
But I
for it.
like what Laura said. We need to decide if we want to move forward with something like this that Pat thinks is a pretty strong need. He works with them. I think Mark thinks it's a need. And see if we want to move forward with this and then decide how we're going to work it
Yeah,
out.
I think that comment got lost in the discussion, because we were talking about two different things. Are we gonna go forward with Johnson with the sludge press? We can decide how we pay for it after the fact.
And if I could just throw out, if Johnson's willing to pull the sludge press out as a standalone
They are.
project, that was about 66,000.
Right.
Was just that, out of the total 96. just
Right.
for color.
66,000 for the
Mark, you have
engineering.
some comments.
Trying to, but
Go ahead.
is it good? Well, I met with the Johnson Control people also, and she arranged the numbers just like she did with you. She cut some things out. They want to get some business. And I understand they want to get, I'm not worried about them making money. I'm worried about us spending money, all right, on something that we don't need right away. We can do this over a period of time. I mean, you're looking at, I know you're looking at these costs here, but the interest, I am concerned. I'm with Don on that. I don't see why we're spending money we can spend over the next several years. Secondly, I asked Mark to come up here because I want to ask questions. Do we need anybody to choose what kind we need and how much, and engineer it and all that? I want you to, where are you looking after you get? You know what you want as far as what sludge press do you want?
Well, the two main companies are in Alcoa, Michigan.
And I know, I brought him up here because last time we talked, you didn't quite trust me, so I want to bring him up.
Mark, can
Answer
you
the
come up to
questions.
the mic so we can hear
Yeah,
you?
come to the,
Who didn't trust you?
you said, let's bring him up here because make sure that Mark's right on this. So let's, what are you looking at? You're looking at Kent. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, there's
Okay,
Kent
why
and
are we
Aqua.
looking at Kent?
Kent is the same size as us.
Okay.
They roughly produce the same amount of sludge.
Excuse us?
Mr. Osborne,
Okay.
it's our water superintendent. We're talking
We
about
need to
sludge
make a
press.
motion.
Mark, go ahead.
We've looked at Aqua. They produce about 3 times the amount of sludge we do. They produce 3 times the amount of water we do. Kent is roughly 3 million a day, same size as us, so it was a good comparable. They have the same process, lime soda ash, as we do. So it was a very good comparable. They've had it for a while. It's been in almost 17 years now, they said.
Wow.
So that's why we've compared them, and they have a very nice operation with conveyors and the way they load their trucks. And so we went up and took a look.
Right, and you pretty much know, based on them, how the system would run and everything. You don't really, do you need an engineer to tell you that? Or do we have,
No.
those people required?
There are some processes along the way we will need engineers to help us with the change of process. You know, you need those plans to go to the EPA and stuff like that. I'm not an engineer
Right.
in that respect. Yes, I could spec out what we need, but at some point, we will need an engineer to draw it up and take the change of process.
And what is the cost of these? And how many do we need?
You basically want to have a double redundancy system. Everybody has done that. They get sludge presses. You have two in tandem, so if one's down, the other one can
So
still
we're really
load.
having, we're talking about this 2.1, and that's two sledge presses, not one?
That's for two, yes, that was in,
What if we had one and used the lagoons for backup? I mean, you're putting two out there. Other people probably don't have lagoons to back it up. Why are we having one idle when
they've filled their lagoons.
You don't think a
They're still full, like Kent's
I'm
is
talking
still
about-
full.
Yeah. So that's for two sledge presses then we're talking about this 2.1, right?
Yes.
But did you say
The original
that,
Johnson Controls quote.
did you say that Kent still has their lagoons
Yes,
And
they
they're-
do, but they're full.
and they're full? Thank you.
Okay, why are they full then? I mean, I'm done.
Well,
Did they not
they've
get
never
them
cleaned, they've never completely cleaned them out once. They are slowly cleaning
But if
them out
ours
as
was
they
taken
go.
out, we could use one of those as a backup, could we not?
Yes, you could, and you should have a couple of them left out there as a
So,
backup.
why do we need two is one of my questions. And then the other side of it is, have we ever had, we talk about this stuff, what if? Have we ever stopped because our lagoons have had a problem?
We got really close this winter.
Have we ever stopped?
No,
We've been
we have
running this
never
thing now
stopped.
for how many times?
We have never
We
stopped.
act like this is gonna end tomorrow, this big sludge problem, and we're gonna have this issue, because we have two now, and we have, no one's coming to pick it up. But we could buy one for 1 million and have the lagoon as a backup. Could we not do that?
You could do that.
And, what the other question was with that? You're still gonna have to pay people to take it away, is that correct? We're not, some people threw around the number, we're gonna make money on this.
I'm
who
not
buys
sure
it?
that we'll make money on that.
Yeah, nobody,
But I do know they will pay at least your trucking cost to get this, because if they have to buy regular lime, it's twice as expensive for them. That's why they do like this process, because it has extra nutrients in it also. We have nitrogen, there are byproducts
I'd
of the
love to be able
process.
to put a bag and sell it. I think you could really create something right there. That's business.
Mark, from the 17 years that Kent was running these sludge presses, did you ever ask them if they break down? Is there consistent problems with them? Or?
We asked them about the routine maintenance. They have had a few minor breakdowns, nothing major.
17 years, wow.
Mark, do they anticipate them to last well into the future? What's the anticipated useful life?
The throwaway part to any of these is the plate press itself, the socks. There are socks. They replace those every so often. There was the big thing. They make a wash cycle for these. Kent has never changed their socks. Aqua changes them yearly because they didn't put that one $80,000 feature on there. And each sock is about $350 plus the man hours it takes to replace the whole line. There's 24 plates on each line.
But the main press itself is a fairly long-term item?
Yes, and it's, the expected life is probably 30, 35 years plus.
Thank you.
Minus some motors,
Maintenance.
typical maintenance items.
So something that doesn't break down very much, and we're buying two to back up something that doesn't break down very much, and we already have a backup with the lagoons. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense when we're not spending community or corporate money like you said you're used to. I'm used to that too. This is government, this is people's money here. Just can't spend something on backing something up.
As long as the lagoons are open for a backup, that is fine. One would be fine.
So, okay.
Go ahead.
Anything else for Mark?
Well, I just have a question. I mean, one, I don't think we're debating community money or corporate money versus government. We all think about it the same, Mark. You work for a big company that spends millions and millions in investment or reinvestment in infrastructure to sell drugs. So we're in the same business. So I don't think it's a matter of someone recklessly spending, our people's money. But what we are looking at, and you've pushed and you beat him like a dead horse to say that this isn't gonna break. He told you it almost went to capacity this year and we had issues. Are you in the business of that, to saying, let's push it to the nth degree so it doesn't break? It's a water treatment facility. He says if we can't get rid of things, it affects the people's water. This is a safety concern. And we're saying, administration is saying, we have problems with this. We talk about this again and again. And Mark even says, I'm gonna need an engineer to help me with this. This isn't a project that I can do. Maybe Aqua needed a better engineer for why they have to replace the, whatever you just said, that now they have to spend $80,000 on a year. I don't know. But we were listening, we didn't bring this up. Patrick had, Johnson Control came up, they assessed the facilities, they're the experts in a lot of this stuff. This was their recommendation. And then Patrick said, this is something that we need. And he has stressed it again and again. So that's what we're going with. And now you have Mark up here, we've all asked him questions.
Mark's given all the information that we want. I'm for getting one. I'm not for financing none.
But this
That's
is
the
the
way I'm
thing,
looking
why
at it.
do you think you're the expert to say whether we need one or two? It's
But I'm
like,
just asking Mark, that's what I asked him about.
you pushed him to say we need one because we had extra lagoons. Two is what he even said we could possibly use, just like Kent, just like Aqua, I don't know how many.
Hey, I'm okay with two, just don't finance them, that's all. Get two tomorrow.
Mark, in the event that all 5 lagoons were not needed, whether you do 2 machines and you keep 1 lagoon, or you do 1 machine, you keep 2 lagoons, whatever it is, are we also not looking, and has this not been the case for the last 20 years, looking for a drying pad and we've looked at building something down there, on that premises, and we don't have room because this affects the vehicles that we use in our street sweepings and the like, and there's an additional cost that we have running down to Canton to use their drying pads. They charge us $650 every time we go down. So as many times as you want that street swept, know that I got to pay $650 to send it to Canton. And we've been looking and looking for years. Previous administrators have looked at this, previous councils, and it was a matter of buying land. We don't have, where can we buy land to be able to do this? And I remember my first year here looking down at the water treatment plant and the service center down there. Is there a place that we could do something there? And to me, I look at the lagoons as there's a lot of available space there. If you didn't need all of them for however many council ends up authorizing you to do, if they authorize it, to me, it would seem to potentially solve another long-term problem where we would be able to put a drying pad on city-owned property, that we wouldn't have to go out and pay,
That's correct. If you went to the far south end of the lagoons, you're past a 300-foot of the well fields. Yes, they would potentially grant a drying pad there.
So, and I apologize to the council that, some of these things that, run around in my head I haven't shared, the grand vision, and again, I apologize. It's probably just a function of trying to juggle 100 things, and I don't mean to exclude anybody from the grand vision, but that is something that, we've been wrestling with for a while, and that fee from Canton went from like $250 to $650. They don't want it. And what's it going to be when it's $1,000? So it's all about risk management. And I hear, what Member Sorretta's saying, and if you can get to a place in between, I think that's a great place to be.
That makes it better that you have a drying pad and you could save money because the street cleaner only goes so far and then you have to dump it. And that's $600 a load.
You got to wash it.
And I don't think they're coming around my neighborhood very much to pick up those leaves from what I can see, so I don't know where you're saving money. But the idea is that, the drying pad is a good idea. I'm for 2 sledge presses because I like redundancy systems, but I just want to see if Rob can come up with a plan, if we can take without hurting anything, can we pull little funds here or there or delay a project and just pay cash for it?
I sense some urgency in addressing this issue. We don't have to be unanimous on this. And I'm going to request that the chairman prepare a proposal for our vote. However she wants to lay it out, and we'll vote on it. And if it goes 4-3 in favor, then we're going to do it. And we'll worry about the financing later on. But let's end the discussion and let's get some action here. We don't have to be unanimous.
That's right.
And if it gets beat, it gets beat. If it passes, it passes. And we'll let the chips fall where they may. I just want to say one thing about nearly at capacity. There was once a young mayor who had a visit from a fire chief just after he became mayor. And the fire chief said, "Hey, did you realize that this past summer we were nearly out of water?" I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, we only had 2,000 gallons in one tank. We couldn't have fought a fire." That's a place nobody wants to be. And it resulted in the expansion of our production and treatment facilities, that conversation. I don't think we want to be in a situation where we're not treating our water. I just don't. So, we've been duly warned. Time's for action. Let's call it.
Without
Let's vote it.
financing.
If you've got 4 people around the table, I'm one of them, I say, let's have something, and you lay it out, we'll look at it, we'll vote it.
I'm not against it, it's just the financing, let it be said on the record.
Yep.
I want it, I don't want to finance it. That's the bottom line.
So.
I'll say it one more time,
Did we not
no
just have a
finance.
discussion a couple weeks ago about $5 a month and saving someone $50 a year? And now we're looking at financing something that's gonna be millions to our community. So I just, it's hard to understand that sometimes, though.
Well, I mean, that's
Okay.
how we do with roads. Have you looked at the road budget?
Yeah.
It's 850,000.
Mayor, where do you stand on that?
Yes. So, I think the discussion's really helpful, because it's real clear that we need to have greater efficiency in the water treatment plant. So when we're looking at the sludge presses, the sludge presses are going to, they could save us up to $150,000 to $100,000 a year. It's real clear that we all agree on the mission or the goal, which is to somehow incorporate sludge presses at some point into our water treatment plant. It's also real clear, too, that time is of the essence. So we've got to make a decision. So the conversations that were conducted with Johnson Control, it sounds like they're already willing to make adjustments to their proposal. So we started off, and this is one of the concerns that I had too, is that it doesn't have to be everything that they originally presented. Because I think the sticking points are, they were going to do the utilities for City Hall, they were going to do the Main Street lighting, and they were going to do the sludge press.
And a chiller.
What was that?
A chiller too, I think.
And a chiller. So now we know that the biggest portion of the project, the most critical, is the sludge press. And the points, the 2 points that were brought up is really the method. Are we going to finance it? Are there any grants that are available, right? And also, do we go with 2 sludge presses? Or can we go with 1? And a combination of sludge presses and lagoons. So, those questions really haven't been answered real clearly. The question is, can Johnson Control come in, modify their approach, and can they make a presentation that will address the concerns about the financing? Maybe we tighten up the project, we set aside the Main Street lighting, we set aside the chillers, we set aside the utilities, we focus on the sludge presses, and then, they can help us to determine what their role is, which is they can do the engineering. But, can we do that without doing long-term financing? And can we do that where we're not having to do 2 sludge presses? Can we get by with 1? Maybe we can't, or maybe we can't. So it sounds like if we can have Johnson Control address those issues, that we could move ahead with it in agreement.
Okay.
Mark, thank you for coming up. You're always a good
Thank you,
wealth of
sir.
information.
Mark, thank you so much.
All right.
All right, so has everybody had their say?
Yes, sir.
For the purpose of moving this to legislative agenda, do
So
we
I-
have at least 4 in the finance committee to move this forward?
Yes.
We have 4?
So you're
All right.
voting to take it off the table? It was tabled.
Oh, it
correct?
was.
But that's a complete different presentation.
So now I need to amend it, right?
We can either amend it or start over.
You didn't vote on it, so you can do whatever you want.
That's right, we did not vote on it.
You can vote on
We didn't have the first reading?
We had two readings.
Yes, we
We
did.
had two readings.
No, then you get, it's on the table.
It's on the table, so,
It can die on the table and you can have a new piece of legislation.
Well, didn't you vote to table it after the second reading?
Yeah.
yeah.
It can stay on the table, you can have a new piece.
Well, we could bring it back for the final reading amended as,
Right, so that we're agreed to have
Chair.
Johnson Control do 2 sludge presses?
Well, what we want them to do is to be able to reasonably justify whether we need 2 sludge
Yeah,
presses or.
We'll give us
or
a
not.
proposal.
Right.
Yeah,
So what we
right now,
want-
there's 2 in there, that's
Yeah.
their proposal.
So I think, this is just my perspective on this. I think that there's a number of answers that, whenever there's a discussion and there's not agreement, it seems pretty clear to me that all the answers are not clear. That the answers that we have are not clear. That there's some areas, like, do we go with 1 sludge press? Do we go with 2? Do we apply for grant funding? Should we apply for grant funding and have Johnson Control do the design? Could they do the design? Or do we have to make a long-term 20-year commitment on financing in order to do it? I think we could do it, we could take into consideration what Mark is bringing up, what Dominic is bringing up. I have those same concerns. Now, it could turn out that, hey, long-term financing really would be the best way to go. And it could turn out that maybe it's not. Maybe we could do it in another method. We all agree on the goal, but we're just not in agreement with the method. So I think we could take a couple of extra weeks and ask Johnson Control to come in and ask them, and they're willing to break it down and then say, hey, we have concerns about financing, long-term. How could we do that? I mean, if they could present a proposal, would you be opposed to that, Stephanie?
No, but I'm saying what's different than what they did just 2 weeks ago? I mean, they've been in touch with all of us. They are willing to send us a
Well,
new
because they had one proposal,
They're willing to break it
and
down.
it was long-term financing,
Yeah,
right? So,
but right now, we're just saying we want to move forward with it. We said the
well,
question was,
so if you want,
we're
you could,
doing
if you get
that-
the votes, you could go ahead and do it, and then what you have is you still have issues that are brought up by 2 members of council and myself that we're not clear on. So if you want to muscle ahead and just get the votes and get it done, we can do that. I don't think that's the best way to go. I think it's better if you try to gain agreement with everybody, and if you've got Dominic who's expressing concerns, Mark who's expressing concerns, then address them,
Dave, I think,
right?
I think some of,
Address them
some
ahead
of,
of time with
there-
have
I
the
think-
experts, Johnson Control, come in and address them.
here's what I heard tonight, for example. You have 2 options, and we may have disagreement. You can have 2 presses, or you can have a press and sludge lagoons.
Exactly, right.
That's a judgment call. You may not have unanimity,
That's $1 million call.
understood.
by experts, that will make that call.
So you're saying we should do what?
Still $1 million for
What I'm saying
You're
is,
saying just go ahead with 2 and don't look at whether you need 1 or 2. I don't think that's wise.
oh,
think we
I
should
don't
look
dispute
at
that.
it
I
at
think you could
least-
have, you can have an analysis
Exactly, right.
and do
so-
that.
so
But
ha-
but
so
my
do
point
it.
is this, Dave, is that many times around this table, there's an overemphasis upon unanimity.
Right.
It doesn't have to be unanimous. Reasonable people are going to disagree.
Because what I would like is just
And-
answers. So I'm just saying on my end,
and-
I don't, the unanimity is okay. What we're saying is that we really don't know whether we should get 1 or 2. We really don't know.
Which we just brought up
So-
tonight
so-
by
right,
us.
So let's get it addressed. And if there's, and then
Don't dispute.
Dominic brought up another issue, which is grant funding. Is there a way that Johnson Control, I'm sure Sheston could work with us, and Sheston could come up, she's really bright and creative, she could come up with some ways that would probably incorporate a proposal that would include Dominic's concerns, Mark's concerns, and now the concerns that I have. I think that would be cool.
And I'm all for like, I think everybody up here is for the presses. 1 or 2, doesn't matter. Whatever we need, we want. It's just the mode of financing it versus paying cash for it.
And is that okay? Is that all right, Stephanie, if we just look at it, like give it another
Dave,
couple
we've
extra
done
weeks?
that, trust me. I mean, we've had them up, and I'm sure they'll come back, because you have these
Yeah,
new concerns tonight.
Right.
Because you've had weird things with Johnson Control, so we
No,
understand that.
no, hold
No,
on.
you
hold
do.
on, Wait a minute.
So we'll
Wait,
have them
no,
come
I'm
back,
gonna
and we
clarify this.
will let them say all that they need to say again. Because of
No.
course, Dave, we want all the answers. But remember, we were the ones that said whether we need 1 or 2. So we've had an expert that has put this through. They said we needed 2. That's why we went with that proposal. It was us that said, do we need 1 or 2? Us,
Who's us?
laymen,
I
us,
don't
all of
remember
us.
being asked that.
You said it tonight.
One or two?
You just said that tonight.
No, I said, I don't know where we got two in the first place. Where'd we
That
get
was in the
two?
proposal.
The
I know, but
The experts said we needed two.
the experts, which are Johnson Controls.
Yes, they were the ones that gave
So
us the
that means we
proposal.
shouldn't question it.
We are questioning it.
Exactly,
But
that's a
it's
good
interesting that
thing.
that's what we
Right.
came up with tonight.
Right.
I know, I'm sorry.
If
So
I
are we
might.
putting this on the agenda then for next week?
I'm one vote.
I'm the vice chairman, and I believe we are putting it on the agenda. We are putting it on as the original proposal minus the lights, the boiler, and the chiller. Pull out everything else. I had a personal conversation with Kirsten and Justin, and they are willing to pull everything out. They're willing to come
Talk
back
about
up here.
financing.
They're willing to come back up here, answer any questions we might have. We can ask about 2 sludges versus 1, but we're leaving 2 in the agenda, the legislation, because that's where it is right now. We're gonna vote it up or down.
Could they
This
show
has
us
got
what the
to go
financing would
forward.
be? We'd like to see the financing of all that.
Right.
That's all I
Obvious.
care about. That's it.
Yeah.
I like it. I just care about the financing.
One or two?
And one of the other
Finance.
things too that we could do is put in the proposal for 2, and you could do it in stages. You know, that could be another area of consideration. And Daryl, we've talked about this several times, right? I mean, you could go with 1 and you could prepare the pad for the second one, right?
I'm not married to any specific
Method.
method
Right.
or number. Here's my concern, is I don't want to see paralysis by analysis. We've got an issue, let's get it something going. All I want to do, and if it takes 4 votes to do it, I'm one of them.
Me too.
You're still talking about $1 million,
Understood.
okay?
We
That-
talk about
so I
millions of
think you should
dollars
put some
all
more
the
time
time.
into thinking 1 or 2, ooh, what the heck? It's still $1 million, sorry.
It's the money, honey.
And that doesn't include financing.
And
Add that
as,
to it.
and as Pat said, the financing would be $100,000 a year. Let's just say, we're saving $50,000 of that, so we'd be spending it anyways with the removal of the sludge.
Well, you had it backwards. The financing is it's 50,000 on 2 million.
It is.
According to his $3 million figure, it's going to be far less, and it's, if we do 1 press, it'd be even far less. But if you're able to eliminate $100,000 minimum worth of trucking, and we're going to find out, you know, from the other, you know, the vendors that I've talked to that have come in here and bid on all kinds of things, you know, I'm hopefully going to be pleasantly surprised to inform council that the cost for this specialized trucking is less. Would love to be able to say that.
I'm
But
excited.
everybody that's coming up here is saying that tanker trucks are in short supply, and well, because it's fracking. All the available tankers are going to frack oil. It's just not a lot of capacity.
Before we move forward,
But-
Director of Finance has a comment.
I just have a question. If we're going to bring this back and the agreement was part of the legislation, do you want me to ask Johnson to rewrite their agreement to only have sludge?
Yes.
Nothing else? Okay. I will reach out to them tomorrow, but I don't know if that will be timely enough for next week, but I will.
Okay.
Like she will.
Now, to that point, are we going to bring it off the table and amend and do the 3rd reading, or are we going to start from scratch? Chair, Vice Chair?
Off the table and amend?
Why not?
Yes.
Off the table and amend, so she can have that by next week. Laura? Think?
Certainly call her first thing tomorrow.
One last point. Is there a way, Pat or Laura, you can put together an operational cost savings we feel that this will present to us? Not knowing that the other bids are coming in yet. You know, like you said, your drying pad, or you have to run the Canton on whatever, that's got to enter into this. This is part of this. It's not just a one-sided, you know, sludge press. We're looking long-term. What else can this do for us, right? You gotta envision that.
Hey, Pat, could we just have our own semi and our own driver just truck it ourselves?
Good. For $1 million.
For-
Okay,
How much
so-
could we buy a rig for?
Okay, so we're done. We put it on
One
the,
technical question.
yes, sir.
I don't have a copy of the legislation that we've tabled.
Go ahead, Darrell, I'm sorry.
I don't have a copy of the legislation we tabled. Did it have an emergency provision in it?
We tabled 2 pieces, one for the appropriations and one for the agreement. I believe that the agreement had an emergency clause.
The
Then
appropriation
you're gonna have to strip that emergency clause out, because you may not have enough votes to pass it on emergency, unless you've got 6. So you should be prepared to amend it, to strip it out.
Right.
Because if you don't have the votes, it's a defeat.
Yep.
Okay.
Get rid of the emergency legislation.
You can't have that in it.
Okay, so we're moving forward.
Roll
Oh,
call,
yeah.
take it off the table?
May I have a motion and a second to take both
You're
pieces of
gonna actually
legis-
have to do that.
Do
at
that
the-
next
You
week.
do that next week.
We can do that next week?
Yeah, you gotta do it next week.
Next week.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't
okay,
do that
that's
now.
right. Yeah, okay, all right, gotcha. Okay.
Wait, is it gonna be on the agenda? Unless we put it on the agenda?
We put it on the agenda.
It's
Okay,
tabled right now.
don't we have to make a motion to put it on the agenda?
Yeah, I mean,
We did.
this is committee, so.
Okay,
uh,
okay.
I think you do. You can vote to take it off the table.
I can do that in committee.
You'll have to vote for sure next
Well,
week.
then,
Sure, of course.
law director says I can, in committee, take it off the table. So is there a motion and a second to take both pieces? What, do I have the number on those?
I can get that. Hold on one second, please. Give me a minute.
I think it's 4-2. No.
It is 28 and 29.
Ordinances 28 and 29 off the table. We'll vote next week. Is there a motion and a second?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Saretta, nay?
No, I'm good.
Good? Okay, we're good to go. All right, next up, we have ordinance rules claims. Chairman Revolt.
Okay, last week we had a little conversation about committee minutes. And the law director and I have conferred, the council president and I have conferred, and we have a proposal for consideration by council. And that is, we take a two-pronged approach. The first is that if we have a court reporter present, that transcript constitute a committee's minutes. Because in effect, the committee business is being discussed, just like we did tonight. Okay? So, that means that, in effect, we have committee minutes. We may not have them, however, by the time of the vote, because they'll be in process of being transcribed. But I believe that if the council president, as he did tonight, asks for, if 4 members, or asks the chairman to assure that there are 4 members, in effect, the committee has agreed to proceed.
And he did do that.
And he did that
Yeah.
tonight. So what in effect we're proposing is that we, if we have the court reporter, and the president of council or the committee chair ask for a vote of 4 to proceed with legislation, then the discussions occurred, the rationale has been provided, the scope of the legislation has been discussed, and we can proceed. That, in effect, becomes the minutes as required in our rules.
So we don't do these anymore?
Now,
Okay.
if, by chance, we do not have the court reporter, then we do these. Now, what's important, however, is that if you will note on the reports, we also ask the committee chairman to identify who from the administration is present. And so it becomes incumbent upon the council president at the opening of the meeting, on the record, to indicate that the mayor, the director of administration, the engineer, et cetera, are present for the conversation. So they're here. So the record is established,
And I forgot to do that.
but that's okay.
I had it written down.
Who's here?
But this will place section 11106, the council meeting agenda, as Member Revolt had stated, that what is a committee report, it's a written report or notice that the meeting's transcribed, and that the president pull the members of council to see that there's a majority to bring it in. And then 11101 simply states that the transcribed meeting shall state those city officials in attendance and seated at the dais. So we'll ask the court reporter if they would, for each meeting, those public officials that sit at the dais, we'll know who's for all time. Actually, today I looked at minutes for 1949, and I could see who was in attendance at the meeting. So this will just state those others beside council, the elected officials at the dais.
Having lived in both worlds, I think having the court reporter record the conversation is superior way to memorialize why council has decided to act. It's a fuller and more complete report than just say council authorized legislation on emergency to adopt, sludge control measures.
And that's all those 1949 minutes.
Yeah, they're too
reflected.
brief.
The village had voted in favor of an ordinance.
So I think this is, if we can, what we'd like to do is try this. I think it answers this question about whether you have authorization. We're specifically authorizing it. It will be in minutes that come probably after we cast that first vote. But nonetheless, the minutes are there. The action of authorizing legislation has occurred on the record.
It also lightens the load right now with the exercise we're trying with finance being clerk.
Yeah. So that's this chairman's proposal. If there are some who would like to vote, we'll have it stuck on an agenda.
We're on the agenda.
I got,
Yes,
okay. Then, Mr. President, there seems to be unanimous consent that we have this amendment to council rules 111.06 on an agenda at your convenience.
And 11101,
Excuse me, 11101.
both of those.
01 and 06.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, sir.
Laura?
Jeff, the one other thing that you and I had spoken about in regards to this was, like you said, the finance department taking on the role of clerk. We had said originally that we would do that until the summer break so that you guys could have a chance to say whether you want it to continue. It was a trial period. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here tonight on the floor, but if you can give us an indication in the next couple of weeks, because summer break is coming, that if you don't wish to continue, then we would need to, go a different direction for after summer break.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That concludes rather exciting.
We have
No.
an amendment. I
Oh, we
would like
do?
to move
Yes.
item 4 be added to the agenda. That is a discussion of state-funded signage on Market Avenue.
That's right, so what we're,
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
so
Chairman Fonte, the floor
what
is
we're
yours.
looking for is, State Route 43, we need some signs on the side of the city, and it's 100% funded by the state. And so I move that we pass it on an emergency because time is of the essence. And then Patrick can explain if there's anything more you need to know.
Yes, we apologize for putting the council in a position where they have to amend the agenda. However, this came in Friday, May 31st, just a couple of days ago, after hours, that from ODOT, and it's their project. They want to replace the roadway signage along Route 43 that's inside the city limits. I just thought if the agenda wasn't that long, that we'd throw it in now rather than make them wait till the June 10th and then pass it on the 24th. If we can do it tonight and then pass it next week, that would put them in a better, happy spot. And ODOT as a group, we try to keep in a happy spot.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I move we get it on the agenda then.
All right, everyone in agreement with that?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you,
Move that to
council.
legislative agenda next week? All right. Everyone had fun tonight, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right, motion to
Everybody
adjourn.
adjourned, second.
Everybody
All in
wait.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
This is that.
Yeah. Because we haven't adopted
Because
this
that's what
yet.
we do, Mark.
We haven't adopted it.
So we've been doing it for years.
Good, keep doing it then.
All right, Patrick, here's what we got.